the NBA champion even really matter? I'm Tony. Welcome back to Streetball Strategies.
It's how you know where it is going. They won't believe in a miracle. I do not tell them, I'd rather just show them. Ain't no little engine that could. I know that he will. I gotta keep going. Even in a dark room, we can get it glowing like.
Today we're talking about, does the team that win the NBA championship, does it even matter that they are the champion? First thing, let me say that what you think I'm probably gonna say, the obvious answer, is my actual genuine real answer, which is it's all relative, right? To some people it's gonna matter and some people it's not, meaning like if you really care about the NBA and you're a fan, obviously it matters. If you're not, then no, it doesn't matter. Yes, that is my answer, and yes, it is obvious, but it does go deeper than that. And at the end of the video, I'm gonna paint a scenario wherein maybe, regardless of who you are, maybe whether you're a fan or not, maybe the NBA champion doesn't matter, no matter if you're a fan or not. So let's dive into why, whether or not the NBA champion may or may not actually matter. So let's focus mainly on the relative perspective, which is if you're a young basketball player, a young NBA fan, it probably does really matter to you who the NBA champion is. Even if your favorite player or team doesn't win the championship, you're probably still paying close attention to the NBA, to the playoffs, and whoever the champion is probably really does matter to you. And I point that out to bring up the point that something that you may have not thought of as being a younger basketball player and fan yet, which is when you're young and you're relatively carefree and responsibility free, there is no better time for your life and your universe to revolve around basketball and the NBA. In that sense, I am kind of jealous of you because in my own experience growing up, I didn't watch the NBA when I was a kid. I grew up in an era where I live in Michigan and the bad boy Pistons were dominating the East, and then they won their championships, and then Michael Jordan's era started. And I didn't watch any of it live. My attitude was, why would I watch other people play, even if they're the best players in the world? Why would I watch other people play when I could be on the court playing myself? Why would I spend my time that way? Then in my teens and 20s, I did watch the NBA, but I watched the NBA primarily as a study tool because I then was taking my own game very seriously. So I was watching the NBA mostly to try to study the best players and coaches on the planet. But I really wasn't watching from a fan's perspective. So I did watch the 04 Pistons dominate the East for a while and win their championship, and I loved that, and that was incredible. But other than that, outside of that, I wasn't really a fan of the NBA. I was watching as a student. And then once I retired from active competition, I wasn't playing anymore, I stopped watching because I wasn't studying it anymore. And so I'm saying that while you are young and basketball is still able to be the center of your life, you don't have life's responsibilities and you're able to be carefree still as a kid and a teenager, I am happy for you that you get to have a favorite team or a favorite player and you get to root for them and you're excited when they win. And I'm telling you that while you're young and you're experiencing that part of your life, that you should cherish it and have as much fun with it as you possibly can. Because in my opinion, as you get older, as you become an adult and you enter the real world, it's only natural that basketball and the NBA especially, they become less involved in your life and thus you care less and less. So hopefully as you're young, right, you're starting to educate yourself, you're starting to understand the things in life that you really love, that you're passionate about. You educate yourself about those things so that you can then one day start a career in that field. Not a job that you hate, because let's make that clear really quick. What most people do is they live a life of basketball, around basketball, and then at some point they find themselves, thrust into the real world where now they have no choice. They're not in school anymore. They can't hide in school anymore. Now they have to go out and earn money to contribute to society. They have no choice but to do that. And now, because they spent their whole life, encapsulated in the basketball universe, they don't know what they want to do. They have no education in whatever it is that they might want to do. And so they settle for going out and getting whatever job they can that pays whatever little amount of money it pays, and they hate that job, but they go to it, they do it all day, every day, even though they hate it. So hopefully that's not you. Hopefully instead you figure out early in life what you want to do, you educate yourself to do that thing, and then you start a career in that field doing what you love. But of course, doing that is very intensive and time intensive and consuming. So that means when you start that career, now you're going to have less time and attention to spend in basketball and on the NBA. And then as life goes on, you start your life, you become more mature, you're an adult now, you're contributing to society, maybe you start a family, and that's even more of your attention that goes towards more important things than basketball and the NBA. My point being that once you get to be like my age, right, whoever wins the NBA championship doesn't really matter, because whatever's going on in the league, whatever is going on with whatever players or teams, it doesn't really matter because you got more important stuff going on. I'm not saying that you can't be a fan and that you shouldn't care. I'm just saying that your life becomes so much more than basketball and the NBA sooner than you expect it to. While you're young, I'm happy for you that you can enjoy the NBA the way that you do, that you care who the NBA champion is, even though it may not be your favorite player or your favorite team. So while you're young, take advantage of that. Have as much fun as you can, be excited as you possibly can, because one day, hopefully, your life is going to be so much more than that. So while you're young and carefree, make sure you take advantage of having the most fun with basketball and the NBA that you can. Now let's talk about this situation wherein it may not matter to anybody, anywhere, ever, who the NBA champion actually is. And I'm not saying that this is the way you should think or this is the correct way to think or anything like that. I'm just saying that this is a perspective that you could have if you wanted to. I think it's at least an interesting way to think about it, even though I'm not saying that this is the way you should see it. The scenario in which I think the NBA champion may not matter at all is what I've been saying about the NBA this year and a little bit last year, which is most of the players in the NBA right now and foreseeably in the future, primarily they are made up, the teams are made up of AAU players, former AAU players. And what happens in AAU is AAU coaches, the vast majority, if not most of them, if not all of them, at some point they go to some kind of basketball convention or conventions in which those coaches are taught and told to teach their players to play basketball a certain way. Now that certain way has resulted in the highest talent, the highest skill in the NBA we've ever seen, but also the byproduct of that is that all those coaches teach all of their players to play basketball in pretty much the same exact way. Now I'm not saying exact. What I'm saying is from a viewer's standpoint, and especially from me because I've spent my life studying the game, when I watch today's NBA generation and players on the court, the average team, the average player on the average night, everybody looks the same because they were all taught how to handle the ball the same, how to shoot the ball the same. They all have the same kind of very similar skill sets. It makes watching the regular season, the average team on an average night, boring to me. Now, of course, there are exceptions, right? There are the superstars who go above and beyond the AAU skill set that they're taught, right? They're either taller than the average player or there's something unique about their game that the average player doesn't have, but that's why they are a superstar, because they have set themselves apart from just being another AAU robot. And it is those players on those teams that make those teams successful, that make those teams the highest seeded playoff teams. The main difference between a good NBA team and an average NBA team is that the average NBA team makes more mistakes than the good NBA teams make. It's not that they have, such a better strategy or they have such better players who have, such more dynamic games. It's just that because they all pretty much play the same way in the same game, even the coaching, when it comes to strategically, the coaching strategies, offensively, defensively, most teams play very similar to each other. It's the teams that do little things, little tweaks here and there that set themselves apart, that play better. And mostly, it's the teams that have the superstars who have set themselves apart from the AAU robots, who have the better teams. And because those teams have those superstars who set themselves apart, those teams also make less mistakes than the average teams. So whoever ends up being the NBA champion, whoever ends up playing the best basketball in the playoffs is the team. It's been this way the last few years. It's foreseeably going to be the same way in the years to come. The best teams are the teams that make the least mistakes, and that is the team that wins the championship. And also, it's usually the team that is the healthiest, because if you have a team with a superstar, but that superstar gets injured and then cannot play, that means that that superstar is not there to make the less mistakes that superstar usually makes. Now you have somebody coming in for him, substituting for him. That player is a lesser player, and one of the major reasons that player is a lesser player is because that player makes more mistakes than the injured superstar. So the team that has the healthiest team with the healthiest superstars is going to make the least mistakes, meaning they are going to win the championship. It's not because that team is so much better and has a such more dynamic basketball team than any other teams in the league. It's that because all the teams, all the players play pretty much the same basketball because of the AAU system. The team that is going to win the championship is the team that's going to make the least mistakes. So in that way, the league is very predictable. It's very predictable to say that if this team with this superstar, if they remain healthy, or if they are healthy come the playoffs, because they're going to make less mistakes than the other teams, that team's probably going to win the championship. That's the way it's been in the last few years. That's the way it's going to be going forward. And to me, that's relatively boring. That's especially boring in the regular season, when most of the players look bored and they look happy to be there. The average players look that way, at least. And when it comes to the playoffs, you can just pretty much assume whatever team's the healthiest is the team that's going to make the least mistakes. That's the team that's going to win the championship. Not because that team stands out for any dynamic, interesting reason. It's just that they're going to make the least mistakes, thus they're going to be the champion. If that's the case, and that's the case that I am making, then why should anybody care who the champion is? Why should it be interesting? I mean, yes, they are the best team technically because they make the least mistakes, but why is that compelling? Why is that interesting? Yes, they have the most talent, the most ability, the most skill. That's a given. I'm not trying to take that away from them. I'm just saying that, so what? Like, they made the least mistakes, thus they're the champion. Great. I'm so compelled and inspired now. Again, I'm not saying that that's the way it is, or that's the perspective that you should have. I'm just saying that if you want to be an NBA pessimist, that could be the perspective that you could have. I'm not saying that you should, or that anybody should. I'm just saying that at least it's interesting to take that into account and say that that's a way that you could look at it. That is why, or why not, who the NBA champion is may or may not actually matter. Let's not be too harsh and hard on those of us who are like, it doesn't really matter to me who the NBA champion is. It doesn't mean that you're a bad fan just because it doesn't really matter to you who the champion of a given year is. I do think that you really can still love basketball and not really care who the actual NBA champion is. Like, I never had aspirations to play organized or professional basketball. I knew that was never in the cards for me, so it didn't really ever really matter that much to me who the champion was. But I still love basketball, right? I'm not trying to disrespect the champion or the players or the coaches. Like, it is undeniable that, as time goes on, especially today, the players and the coaches have the best ability, the best talent, the best skill we've ever seen, and it's only going to get better. There's no doubt about that. I'm not trying to disrespect anybody like that. But it can also be true simultaneously that just because there's the best skill we've ever seen doesn't mean that it's not also boring. Now, if you're a younger player and you're newer to basketball and you're experiencing all this stuff for like the first time, then obviously it's not boring to you. But for those of us who've been there, done that, seen, I've watched 30 years of NBA basketball and spent 30 years out here on the court experiencing it for myself. At this point, I'm not seeing anything interesting or dynamic about the NBA other than the high skill level that's keeping me super engaged as a fan. Thus, it doesn't really matter to me as much who the champion is. So I want to thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, if you found it interesting at all, like I wouldn't be surprised if you disagree with me about, you know, it definitely does matter who the champion is, and you know, if you feel like I'm disrespecting the players or whoever, you know, if I'm disrespecting you, then I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to say you're wrong. I'm not trying to say you should see things my way. I'm just giving you my perspective and sharing it with you, and maybe you haven't considered that other people, fans, players, have this kind of perspective. But let me know down in the comments what you think. If you disagree, it's all good. We can talk about it. We can discuss. We can all grow as basketball players when we do that. And while you're doing that, make sure you hit that thanks button down below and that you subscribe. You should subscribe first, and then you should hit that thanks button, because when you do, any comment that you make will be highlighted so it'll stand out from all the other comments, and it directly supports the channel when you hit that thanks button. So anybody that does, thank you very much. As always, like, share, comment like I said, hit that notification bell so you're notified whenever any video goes live on this channel. And until then, I'll see you guys next week.
Look, I come from a city, you hear signs when we sleep. Heaven sent, hands down,